Chapter 7. The Man on the Wall. When Miss Hussey read the piece of writing out loud at the end of the week, there was a shuffling and a looking around for who seemed embarrassed and who looked too pleased. A strange chair? Modern art with things hanging from it? Does the writer want to stay anonymous, or do you want to tell us what it is? Miss Hussey asked after several guesses had been made. Silence. Petra cleared her throat. Well, it's a special book. Petra thought suddenly of the calm, intelligent woman in her dream. The woman in the yellow jacket. She probably never had to explain her writing, and suddenly Petra felt the woman was sort of keeping her company, whispering, "It doesn't matter what they say. I understand." "A book?" Denise snorted. "Berries and smelly pants?" Petra's mouth closed tight. Miss Hussey turned toward Denise. "Yes, unexpected similes can carry a powerful surprise. They're refreshing, aren't they?" "Don't know what similes are. Should probably look them up. They're a great tool for writing." Denise looked as if she had smelled something bad. Calder was impressed by Petra's writing and wished it were his own. An hour later, in the cafeteria, he spotted Petra in a corner by herself. He decided to join her. He wanted to tell her about the threesome outside his house yesterday and how much he liked her description. He was imagining how surprised Petra would be to have his company. It was then that Calder's lunchbox collided with the back of the chair and popped open. Petra heard the bang and watched the bologna sandwich, now airborne, cross the table with an impressive speed. By the time Calder retrieved his sandwich and sat down, she began to laugh. All right, Calder said. "It's just that I was reading about unexpectable loud noises and things falling from the sky, and there was this whoop and then a flying." She gasped. "It's not you. It's just too perfect." What are you reading?" "The book I wrote about. I found it at Powell's yesterday." Calder saw that it said "Low" on the spine. Weird title. No wonder she was trying to cover it up. "It's by this guy, Charles Fort, who spent a lot of his life looking for newspaper articles about unexplained stuff," Petra said. "You know, like weird lights in the sky, objects traveling through rooms without any visible explanation, ghosts, crazy things like that. He talks about how blind and idiotic he thinks a lot of our education is. And he's funny. He doesn't take anyone's thinking too seriously, including his own." She paused, surprised at herself for saying so much. "I love hearing about people who figure things out for themselves. Plus, I love to think about things that no one understands yet." Calder's mouth was full. "Almost anywhere you look in here, there is something amazing. Listen to this." Petra flipped to the middle of the book. "There have been many mysterious disappearances of human beings. Chicago Tribune, January 5th, 1900. Sherman Church, a young man, employed by the Augusta Mills, Battle Creek, Michigan, has disappeared. He was seated in the company's office when he arose, ran into the mill, and he has not been seen since. The mill has been almost taken into pieces by the searchers, and the river, woods, and country have been searched." And then, records of 6 persons who between January 14th, 1920 and December 9th, 1923 were found wandering in or near the small town on Bradford, Essex, England, unable to tell how they got there or anything else about themselves. Calder had stopped chewing and was staring at her. "Tommy knows a kid named Frog, a kid in New York who just disappeared." "Frog?" Petra started laughing again. "A flying frog?" Calder kind of wanted to laugh too, but the news wasn't supposed to be funny. What was she talking about anyway? "Do you believe this Fort guy?" As soon as Calder said it, he wished he had it. It wasn't really what he meant. Petra's face closed, and she looked disappointed. Well, part of what is so neat is that he worked from newspapers. I know most people would think that it's completely stupid. Abruptly, Petra started to gather her things, stuffing low into her lunch bag. This wasn't going well. Calder did understand Petra's excitement. It was just that he hadn't wanted to look like an idiot again. Plus, the frog connection had been such a weird coincidence. Before Petra could get up, he blurted, "Your writing was great, and I also saw Miss Husey, an old lady called Miss Sharp, and Mr. Watch, my boss from Powell's, outside my house yesterday. They were all together." Petra no longer looked unfriendly. "Mrs. who?" "Sharp. At least that's what it sounded like." Petra pulled out her book again. She opened to the first page and turned it towards Calder. "Strange, huh? Louise Coffin Sharp." Calder read. "Do you think that's her? I could find out." He said as if there was nothing to it. "Okay," Petra beamed at him. "Thanks. I'd love to know. I didn't think the first owner would still be alive." The next day was Saturday, and Calder arrived at Powell's early. Mr. Watch was seated behind the front counter, frowning over what looked like a letter. "Ah, yes, I need to make a delivery." Mr. Watch refolded the letter. "I'm sending you down the street with some books. The name is Sharp." Calder grinned. Events were fitting together now with the precision of pentominoes. He ventured, "Would this be Louise Sharp?" Mr. Watch looked stern. "Yes, but not to you." He handed Calder a paper bag filled with books. On the way over, Calder peeked into the bag. There were some novels in French, a new book about art by David Hockney, who is the artist that you see right next to me. It looked like the kind of thing Miss Husey would read. There was also a small beat-up book called An Experiment in Time. When Calder flipped to the table of contents, he saw that Chapter 2 was called The Puzzle. Mrs. Sharp must not be all bad. If she recognized Calder, she didn't let on. He decided not to remind her about the glass of water. Calder noticed that she had an unusually green eyes, a sea green surrounded by lots of wrinkles and bones. She asked him to wait in the living room while she got a check. He looked around. He was standing on a huge oriental carpet. Velvet cushions, naked sculptures, glass cabinets. The place was a museum. And in the corner, on a neatly organized desk, sat a large, fancy computer. When he saw it, Calder couldn't believe his eyes. There, hanging over the sofa, was a big version of that painting on his box. "Do you know what that is?" Her voice made him jump. "I was going to ask you. You see, my grandma gave me a box with that painting on the cover, and I was going to try to find out who did it. I just did some homework that described it. That's so strange, isn't it?" Mrs. Sharp sniffed and handed Calder the check. "Well, not really. That's a print of a Vermeer painting called The Geographer. There must be 1,000 of them around." Calder borrowed Petra's copy of Lowe that afternoon. She was right. Fort was an extraordinary thinker. He looked fiercely into the occurrences that no one could explain. Even better, he looked everywhere for patterns. Calder understood the man's fascination with connecting things that didn't seem related, and he admired the way Fort challenged the experts. How could Miss Sharp have ever gotten tired of such an exciting book? Speaking of Miss Sharp, he had some detective work to do. The reproduction of the geographer in his library book was clearer and brighter than the copy of the painting in his box. Behind the man was a framed map. You guys can see that right here. This is the actual painting from Vermeer. And above it, that signature, I. Vermeer. And underneath that, MDCLXVIII. Calder counted. 1,000 plus 500 plus 100 plus 50 plus 10 plus 5 plus 3. 1,668. The artist's full name was Johannes Vermeer. Also,